I'm Jen, and I have letter C.
JD, I have letter D.
I'm Stephanie, and I have B.
Julianne, and I have A.
Megan, E. Stephanie, I have A.
And this is session 7.
Session 7, talking about creation. Creation.
Say it with confidence.
It's true. So, what did we think about how different acquisition and learning was?
I liked the way they defined it and they made it separate. Mm-hmm. I liked especially the part where it was like, learning is what you do in school. And for me, that really was like, oh, like I could get around it and I could like wrestle with that and understand that. Mm-hmm. And then like acquisition was just something that you do subconsciously. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that was a really cool way for them to separate the two and make it easy to understand. Because like we all had experience with school, and we all like understand like, oh, like I can see how I could like learn something subconsciously. So I thought that was like a really neat way to be able to differentiate the two that like almost everybody can understand.
I like how they said that like language learning, you're learning about the language.
Yeah.
And just that like in that kind of context, when you're learning in schools or like in classes, you won't necessarily like go all the way to fluency just by taking those classes, because you also need that like immersive kind of experience with the language. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that was really interesting and also kind of encouraging, because I'm a language major and I know I myself am nowhere near fluency. So it was just nice to know that like, you know, I can go and get that experience somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting how that everyone's born with like the universal grammar, and everyone like knows and can like hear different sounds of any language, but living in an area will, I don't know, I've heard the term of like your neurons, they pair off for the specific language that you're being born into, which is interesting. What was the other? Universal grammar, and then there's another thing that we read about. Shoot. I don't know. I'll get back to it.
Okay.
That it's like this innate ability that everyone has.
I thought it was interesting when he talked about that, like, the learning part just acts as a monitor and editor, and that was easy to, like, understand, because I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like, your fluency is, like, something that just comes naturally, but then, like, learning is how you're like, okay, I said that wrong, or, like, this is how I should be, like, relaying that. And so it's almost like you need, like, the acquisition, and then, like, learning is just helpful in the end to, like, apply it more, I guess.
Yeah. I like what they said. It was like language acquisition gives us the fluency of the language, and learning gives us the accuracy of the language. So going off of what you guys said.
Yeah, definitely. And the PSYOP strategies.
I'm still a little bit confused about the PSYOP stuff. Can somebody like summarize it?
So it's just like a method of teaching that teachers are trained to use. They use a lot of repetition and like a lot of visuals. So I know in like a practicum classroom I've been in, she like had a lot of like cues. Like they were learning about goods. So she defined the word goods. I can't remember what the definition is, but she had them repeat it, and then she had like a physical motion that they had to do while they're. It was like goods, something you sell and you can make a profit, and cha-ching. So like just adding like this visual and like physical motion to the word just helps students understand it better.
Okay.
Is it like creating an engaging kind of environment?
Yeah. Okay. And I feel like I mostly understood it in a way that it's like it's easier for students to make that connection outside of class. Like you learn about it, but then it's easier with those strategies. It helps them like make like in a connection between like in class, but then like also like going like just home or like to recess or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like applicability.
Yeah.
In that way.
Mm-hmm. Another strategy I've heard of is like allowing the students to discuss with their group members, so that, you know, like kids that don't like to speak as much, they have a chance to just talk to their neighbor instead of sharing with the whole group. And then like a different student can share if they want to. like comfortable and
Just like safe.
they can learn.
Okay, so as far as like input with like the PSYOP strategies and how that relates, like they talk about like comprehensible input, that would just be like getting the message through type deal using different ways. I know they talked a lot about. I get all of the readings from the weeks mixed up, but they talked sometime this week in these readings. They talked about how like it was important to just get the message through as long as the message got through, like they were acquiring stuff. So that ties that would tie in with the PSYOP strategies. Then they could use like different ways along with talking to get the message through there. Okay, cool. Yeah, cool. PSYOP strategies. Sweet.
Do we have like, was there anything that you found like applicable in terms of like PSYOP strategies and language learning? Like, any particular jumps or bridges between those?
I know Crashen talked about how language class was a place that you can give comprehensible input to your students so that you can go to the outside world to learn from your experiences, kind of like, was it his experience of going to Mexico? Did he also go to Mexico? Or maybe we read about Yvonne again.
She was in a reading this week too.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, like, so whoever went to Mexico was able to get some training in the classroom, but then it made her experience easier when she went to Mexico. So, like, learn and interact with the culture.
I think, well, one of the biggest things that I picked up on, Krashen in the videos talked a lot about like low stress situations to learn in, and I think that's kind of what the PSYOP strategies are creating, just very low stress, engaged activities that the students are learning in. And I feel like he said so many times in the video, like low stress, low stress, low stress.
Yeah.
And those PSYOP strategies they seem like the students are having more fun than worrying about what their grade is on the test at the times of the videos. So those are something that I've picked up on. And I think I don't know, there's a lot of merit to that. Like, you do learn a lot when you can learn a lot when there's a lot of pressure on you too. But when there's no pressure and you can just be doing things and, like, using language or whatever, you're using it without really even overthinking it. And I think there's a lot of merit in that.
Yeah, I think I really liked what, Jen, I think it was you, when you were talking about the affective filter, about how students who, like, feel pressured, or they like feel like everybody's looking at them, or they feel bored, or they feel like they don't want to be there, like those are all going to stop them from learning. And the point that JD just brought up, like if they feel like no pressure, like comfortable, it's going to like remove part of that affective filter. And I think the PSYOP strategies are going to be real good at that.
They'll probably be more open to like trial and error as well, like being like more willing to, I mean, not that you want to make mistakes, but that you'd be more open to making mistakes because you'll know you're going to learn from that in some way.
Yeah.
I don't remember if this is in the video or in the book, but I just remember it talking about the affective filter and that it starts like in the classroom, but then it also helps if like teachers have good relationships with their students and like know more about them, so then there isn't like that stress level because you're like, okay, this person doesn't know me, like I don't know if I want to share, but it's like when you start building relationships with those students, then like the stress level just like slowly goes down.
Yeah.
Good ideas to think about for the future.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess like the kind of one interesting question that she had that she wanted us to discuss was like what we think the purpose of a language class is.
Yeah, because she's in that some people like don't believe in language classes, which is interesting. Like, I hadn't heard that before.
And again, like after what I just read, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, I took 6 years of first year Spanish and a year of second year Spanish. I don't know, look at Spanish. Like now, like I don't know. I can maybe introduce myself and ask you where the bathroom is. That's it.
Right. You get way more experience being in a culture that primarily spoke Spanish than
And listening and like speaking in like halting
interacting.
sentences.
Yeah.
Just getting that.
Yeah. But then again, in the video, the guy said, like, if you throw someone, like, if you don't know any Spanish and you didn't take any classes, and then you went to Mexico, it'd be harder for you to learn the language because you don't know what they're saying. And so he was saying, like, it has to be a balance of, like, language and acquisition. Like, there needs to be, like, a foundation of learning language, because that way you can, like, know, like, the specific, like, how to, like, put together a sentence, like, syntax and stuff. But then, obviously, like, acquisition I think is more important, but we definitely still have to have, like, a good base in order to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, like he says in the video, the goal of language class is to make you an intermediate so that you can get more comprehensible input from the rest of the world. So it does, just like we said, it like builds that base, hopefully, and then while you're getting into learning it, you can go and immerse yourself more, and then you learn how people are using it in a different way.
Just like that, it's important that you're learning it while you're using it while you're in like that zone of understanding, I guess. Because I mean, you didn't need to use Spanish, did you? Like afterwards, so it kind of just
Lose it,
Well, how crazy would it be too if, like, what if people didn't really need to communicate verbally? Like, we just didn't have to, so learning English was just an optional thing that you could do when you got to school, but you didn't really ever have to use it otherwise.
Yeah.
So you would probably know, like, grammar rules, or like how to ask for certain things, or like different, you might know the rules, but you wouldn't just use it casually. You'd only be thinking through.
Right.
I don't know what you would even be learning, really.
Yeah.
You need it.
just even thinking back on like high school like classes where you might only have a language class maybe like 3 times a week, so and it's only for an hour, and that's just all the language immersion you get compared to like bilingual schools where maybe half of your day is done in Spanish with different subjects.
That is so cool.
Just I mean, I don't know, the knowledge there really.
Did you guys have like multiple language teachers at your school that were like teaching the same language but teaching it completely differently? Because in my high school, we had 2 Spanish professors, and I had the one that was like, you know, classic, like I'm going to teach you some grammar, you're going to have like written tests, like oral exams, whatever. And this other Spanish teacher that I never got to take, like just sat his students down and just like, they had like all Spanish days most times, where like they weren't allowed to speak, they weren't speaking in Spanish, and he only spoke in Spanish. And like my little brother had a professor at community college for sign language who did the same thing. I really wish I could have like taken a class like that just to
Get that difference.
Yeah, because I mean they had that like that nice balance you were talking about. Like they have the days where they're learning the grammar and stuff, and you know the specific hand motions. But they also have days where they were like, nope, like we're gonna immerse ourselves in the language. Like today we're not gonna speak English. I thought that idea was really cool. I just thought it was weird to see both ways in high school.
I guess it is difficult to actually like learn and retain a language if you're not living in a culture where that language is, you know, spoken really at all. Like for example, here in Bellingham, yes, we have like a lot of language classes and language majors that you can do, but we live in Bellingham. This is mostly English speaking, so like if you're maybe taking Chinese here, you might not find like any chance for immersion or like just ability to practice.
Yeah, like makes you wonder that like for me like going into being an English teacher, like it almost makes you wonder like if I should have any like language immersion in my English class, because it's like if no one else is gonna do it, then like who's gonna like know how to? I don't know. That'd just be difficult because it's like, okay, which language do you choose, and like what if they're like, wait, that's not part of your curriculum. Like this is an English class, not a Spanish class.
My French teacher in high school, one day, I forgot why he was talking with us about it, but he was explaining in French. We were looking at a book in French, and he said something about the hero's journey, but none of us had ever studied it before. So he just took a whole day out of like our French classes and just in English taught us
In history,
the hero's journey and everything. So that was like a weird like take us out of the class or whatever we're learning kind of context.
Yeah. feel like sometimes as a teacher you like think like, okay, if they don't know this is super important, and like if they haven't been taught this, I should just like take my time and do it for them.
I think that's a really good question. Can anybody see the time there?
15:15.
Just like, even if we're not like a specific language teacher, like how do we,
What's our boundaries, like what, like if you're like a math teacher, like but you know a ton of science and like these kids aren't getting it, like when is it like appropriate for you to step in and be like, okay, like here's this that's gonna help you guys, even though we're like in math class.
Well, that actually kind of happened today in my SCED class, because we have to write a lot of narratives and stuff, and my professor brought up ambiguity in sentences, which we're learning about in the other ELL class right now, and he like taught us this whole lesson about ambiguity, and he's like, I'm not going to totally get into the grammar part of it, but like I want you guys to be direct because this sentence right here can be taken this way or this way, and like we had this whole discussion about it. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I had this discussion last night in a different class.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, which definitely ties into like cross-cutting concepts and the new like PSS type deal.
What I was thinking though is when you brought up like maybe if you are a math teacher but you have a lot of knowledge about science, like what would that, if you're in an elementary school like or middle school maybe, let's go with that, and so you have your specific subject and there's another teacher who's teaching science, like what would that teacher think? Like
would they be like, wait, like that's not what I wanted to teach them yet, or like we're not there, or like you're gonna confuse them, kind of thing. And so like when you think about language, like what if there's like a teacher who speaks Spanish like better than the Spanish teacher, and then like she hears them, and then she's like, wait, you're teaching them wrong, like you know. And so I think it'd just be interesting to like see the dynamic of teachers who speak the same language but one's teaching it and one's not.
Yes, that also like requires good communication with your colleagues as well, and hopefully you get along with them.
Yeah, and like know about them. Definitely.
Questions?
Did anybody else have like any other thoughts or questions about like language classes in general?
Well, and I was sort of wondering like how much the ELL, like if you have somebody that takes ELL students out of the classroom and they're working on specific things, how much does that correlate with what like the students in that grade at that level are actually learning at the time? Like, are those ELL students learning kind of similar grammar things at the same time as like these kids are learning about like parts of speech, or like how is it correlating so that they can bring it back to the classroom and not be totally behind? Like how much are they losing in those 20 or 30 minutes?
Yeah, didn't one of the teachers we talked to at Fisher Elementary say they pulled some of their students like ahead of the lesson and would kind of go over it before they started it in class to kind of prepare them?
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
I think the kindergarten teacher.
Get that like initial panic out of their system.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Right.
Then like while they're going through the lesson, we'll be like, oh yeah, they said we would go through this part.
That makes sense.
Laid out.
Yeah, it definitely like you rely on like just having good communication with your colleagues, like you said. Like you just have to be like in good communication and like making sure that you're on the same page with teaching specific things.
Right. Definitely collaborative.
Hope it will work out in the future.
Are we on chapter 5?
Yeah, it like this one. I figured we'd talk about like the approaches or whatever. So like, I know Julie and I had the language as a structure. Did anyone do mental faculty or functional resource? Were those assigned?
Yes, I think they were. I remember reading. Jen, did you do functional? I thought you did functional.
I think so. Kind of like raise questions.
But I mean, it was all really interesting just to see like all these different like, approaches that go into like learning a language.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and like in the book, there's like a little chart that has like the 3 different approaches, and then it has the methods next to them. And so Julian and I had language as a structure, And then the method for that says teach grammar rules explicitly and have students practice with decontextualized exercises. And then language as mental faculty had teach only a few grammar rules that students can use to monitor output. And then language as a functional resource says following a curriculum cycle, teach grammar forms and functions through modeling, joint construction, and individual practice. And so it's just like interesting because I feel like usually a teacher like sticks with one.
Yeah.
And so, and it didn't really say that like one was better than the other. It just had like different ones that you could teach with.
Has anyone like seen any of these like kind of enacted in the classroom? Maybe not. It's okay. I'm just bringing this question.
Well, I feel like the mental faculty one is kind of. Did you say your brother had that Spanish class or something? Or your friend? Whatever, like how mental faculty is more like when the teacher would walk in and only speak Spanish and wouldn't really teach as much grammar. And towards like more like mentally challenging because you're like just having to like, I don't know if that makes any sense.
I think you did. Did you do that? I think you did mental. It's at 5.
Figure out your Postman
Oh,
stuff.
okay, yeah.
It's,
We've
gotten so deep in the
That's
corner
right.
that it's kind of just.
Yeah.
I was wondering what.
I know, it's like, I'm confused.
Wait, so we're talking about 5 right now?
Yeah. So that's what I was talking about earlier with like the universal grammar, and then the second thing was the language acquisition device.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, I
Nice.
know something. But I read about how everyone has this innate ability to learn language. So like even young toddlers, they'll make. We can learn a lot from kids or people that make mistakes when they speak, like little toddlers when they say, I don't know, like, I goed over there instead of, went,
Yeah.
because it's like just an irregular verb, but they just like overgeneralize patterns in grammar. I forgot where.
They even talked about like adding on, like in particular, like in grammar, like adding on an S.
Oh yeah.
I uses the body or something.
Right.
Sorry, we were on that topic.
They talked about like toddlers.
Foots.
Yeah,
Or-
foots and all that.
Mooses.
But
Huh? Mooses.
Yes.
Yeah, and they talked about how there's a certain order of like acquisition, I guess. So like the S, like different morphemes are learned before others. So like the S for plural, to make something plural, comes before adding an S for like a singular verb.
making it
Or yeah, or possessive. Or like they,
I think it was like
hers.
he walks versus like
yeah, he walks.
versus like
Oh.
the students' books. That kind of, like the students.
Yeah.
They're taking ownership of that.
Okay.
Seriously, it's so interesting like how quickly a kid can pick up a language.
Right.
It's so much harder when you're older.
Yeah.
It really takes time because even if you try to correct them, you can correct them like 100 times, but they'll still say the same thing until I don't know, they develop later. I don't know. They,
The idea of correctness.
right.
That's why it's crazy to me that like the expectation is for ELL students to learn it so quickly. Because if you really think about like acquiring language, like our first language, yeah, we start speaking, we're conversational by the time we get into kindergarten, but that's already just 5 years of being conversational, and then you're learning how to read and write. Like to be literate takes another few years.
Right. Also, like it's those first 5 years. That's the only language you've known.
Exactly.
Whereas ELL students, it's a completely different background in language.
I know one of the strategies that I read in this week's post for like teaching language, I don't know whether it was direct or indirect, but it was instead of giving them the rule, this was in like a language class, and then like having them come up with examples of it, it was like giving them examples and having them like use as examples to figure out what the rule was.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking, like, the difference between, like, record and record. It's the same word, spelled the same way. One's a noun, one's a verb. But I didn't actually realize until this year when somebody told me what the pattern between, like, noun versus verb syllable pronunciation is. Like, if you have it in the first part of the syllable, record, it's the noun. If it's in the second part of the word, record, it's the verb. And it's just, like, I, like, grew up, like, saying these words and, like, knowing the difference, and, like, I'm 21, and I just learned.
Yeah.
So you've got, I just looked up,
Produce.
like, import.
Produce.
Yeah, produce and produce. Import. So you can import something, or, like, it can be an import. So you can import it, or it can be an import. That's an awful example because nobody pronounces it like that. That's so supposed to be. It's not supposed to be pronounced. Discount. You can you can discount something, or you can have a discount.
Yeah.
Like there's a ton of there's
like
a ton of examples
slight.
for this. Yeah, like conflict. You can have like conflict with somebody, or you can like be conflicted.
We should tell that to our other class.
I know. I'm just thinking about
Because we talk about
Homophones?
talk about stress. Yeah, homophones and whatever. I don't know. There's like 5 different ones.
Homographs, homonyms.
But like if I had to think about that rule before I said a sentence every time, like there's no way I would pronounce these words right. But like learn like having been immersed in like learning like
Acquisition.
just this tiny the acquisition part, and then like learning the rule afterward, it was like, oh, like no shit. Like wow. So like I really liked the example they gave of like how to teach that stuff, where it's like you give them examples and you have them construct the rule and so that they recognize the pattern. They're like, oh look, there's a pattern. I thought that was really cool. So that way it's like they're discovering it themselves too, which also helps.
That is cool.
Well, speaking about like things that you don't really think about, or like things that can affect your speech, I think it was in set 4 that like B and C talk about. Which one is it? Set 4, you talk about factors of like social and psychological distance that will influence second language acquisition. And I think like in that part somebody listed out all the factors.
Do you want me to read them?
Sure,
Okay.
that'd be helpful.
Social distance, social dominance, integration pattern, enclosure, cohesiveness, size, cultural congruence, attitude, and intended length of residence.
Oh, and then there's psychological distance was motivation, attitude, and culture shock. So I was just curious, like, what you all thought might be like, I don't know, what students might be affected by the most out of these, like, if there is an actual hierarchy in those factors.
I kind of talked about like the students' attitude towards learning a new language because like that will definitely like just personally affect them, and also just I think that's something I brought up. Just like if a student's like kind of wary about learning a new language, they're not going to be like as engaged as someone who like is really interested in learning language. So I just talked about attitude as like the biggest one for me for like the social aspect of it.
Or necessity. I liked the idea of like anticipated length of residence.
Yeah.
Like if I'm only gonna be here for like 6 months, honestly, if I went to like another nation for 6 months and like might not bother to learn the language like completely. But if I know I'm gonna live there for like 6 years, it's definitely gonna be worth it for me. So that's like a little bit more of that like tied into attitude. Like now I have like a reason, so now I'm motivated to do.
Yeah.
I like that part. I like that. That was my favorite reason. But.
I liked when it talked about enclosure. So this is just like a community that kind of works on their own. So they have like their own newspaper and language. I don't know, these are examples in the book. But it kind of reminded me of that Tribe, that video we watched.
Oh, yeah. The one that we cannot pronounce.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That had to be an
That
invention.
tribe. How they had no need to get outside help, so they were enclosed within their own community. So I think that would definitely affect integrating into a different language or culture.
Yeah.
Like international schools.
Wait,
Like international schools, like you go to Saudi Arabia, and you live in a compound, and you can leave the compound if you want, but within the compound, like, people speak English, like, people are from, you know, the places that you're from, the schools in the compound, the wives work in the compound, lots of husbands work in the compound.
I think it would depend on like what international school you're in. Like definitely there are like some international schools that are in a community like that. But I don't know, just like speaking from experience, I've been in international schools where it's just like that's it. And around you are different cultures. So.
Yeah, when I
So
lived in Bahrain, that's kind of how it was. Like, we lived in a compound, and it was, like, all American speaking, and, like, my parents worked there, but then, and then our school was, like, K through 12, so that was interesting. But, yeah, that's great. It was, like, weird. But, yeah, it was, like, little children, and then, like, huge people. And then, Dad, Mom, like, is that you? But, yeah, that's definitely interesting, yeah.
Yeah, definitely the enclosed things are going to make a difference.
Cohesiveness or like just the ability of being able to like apply like whatever culture you come from with like whatever culture is there as well. Like just seeing if there are any similarities or if there just are a lot of really big differences. I think that would really affect like how much you'd be able to like integrate your own self into that.
Well, even as far as speaking the other language, like we've been learning a lot in our other ELL class about, like there's sounds that are specific to certain languages that we don't even use. And so it's also important too to like recognize that there's going to be sounds in English that other language speakers have never used before, and they're not even going to hear the difference in those two sounds. And figuring out like how to, like if there's too many of those differences, it might be hard for someone to ever actually pick up on what people are saying here.
That's interesting though that you just brought up like sounds. Like how would you teach somebody who's never done that sound before, like how to make a certain sound?
Well, and even like the ones that we're learning already, like talking about where in the mouth, it's like I don't even know, like I couldn't describe to you like where I'm making the R sound.
It's just
like
there.
Right. Yeah, like when she's like, okay, like when you make this noise, like what part of your tongue is doing it? And I'm like, I don't know, I can't feel my tongue. Like,
no, I've never paid attention to this.
Hold on a second.
Yeah. Yeah, so like how to like teach someone something they've never heard. I feel like imitation. I feel like it's like the easiest way to like just keep hearing it and like practicing it back and forth, I guess. But what if they can't pronounce it or something?
Yeah, if they can't pronounce it, or it sounds just too much like another sound. Like she uses the example of R and L a lot, and how those like sound like the same in other cultures or some other languages. And if somebody just knows, like in their language, L and R are the same sound, and then suddenly they come here and it's like, no, I can't even think of two different like examples, but two words that have an L and then an R sound in a similar spot, like
really,
really and leery, like those two words would be very confusing. Switched around, and they have two completely different meanings and would never go together.
Right.
Yeah.
And then to
I've
us,
heard the same thing about D and T. Like
too.
ladder and latter.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody says ladder. Like they don't pronounce the T's; they just say it like a D. Yeah, like they're T's.
Yeah.
Well, even in Spanish, they have two different R's and N's. For me, it was hard to learn them.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I guess like even in reading, like because there are certain letters that are pronounced differently in different languages, and I mean, let's see, like J, isn't that sometimes like for us it would be a Y in a different language?
Yeah.
just the name. For example, I can only think of the name Maya. Like sometimes that is spelled with a J rather than a Y. So like even making that transition.
Well, or even thinking about words like cough or laugh, like a GH making the F sound, that does not make sense.
Yeah, they're like, what's this, like, cog?
Yeah, like, what is this word?
Cajon.
Like, and how do you explain that, oh no, sometimes the G and the H together make an F sound? Like, it just happens.
It only
Or
makes
that
sense,
they're
though.
not even like making a sound like plow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're like, wait,
It's just there.
why isn't it W? Like,
Yeah.
Or I don't know.
that's
Actually, is
what
that
a
how
lot
you
of
spell plow?
Words!
Dough.
Dough. There we go.
Yeah, like silent letters. Look at that, like sign.
Opossum. Yeah, that's why people say that learning English is like one of the hardest languages because it's subdued.
But I want to spell it this way, and the entire like rest of the nation is just like, okay, that's fine. We'll spell it that way too. I'm looking that up.
Well,
I saw a funny post one time. I don't know why it made me think of that, but it was like, why don't the words cough, rough, something else, like all the O-U-G-H, like why don't all these words rhyme but pony and baloney do? And you think of how baloney is spelled.
Yeah.
It's just so funny to read.
that's so true.
I'm like, wow, yeah, no, that does not make any sense.
You're like, yeah, that's good. Wow, that's funny. Well, we could jump to what we think about ASL, ALS. ASL.
It is spelled with a GH.
It is?
Oh,
Okay.
No, it is?
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's the preferred spelling of
Wow.
English outside of North America.
I was just bringing
Yeah.
some
English.
British teaching today.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Anyway, sign language.
I did not realize that there's ever been an argument that sign
That it
language
wasn't?
is an actual language. However, it did kind of blow my mind when I learned that like there's different languages and accents of sign language.
right.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
Just that there are different like ways that you could sign something that is representative of like a social kind of group.
Yeah.
That was like even what they talked about. They talked about like how it can be used to represent your socioeconomic status, your age, sex, and like educational background.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is so crazy because you think about like how we speak, and it's true verbally how you speak. It can represent so many different things about where you come from. And I kind of had in my head that sign language was such a universally same thing. That,
Yeah.
Some colleges don't even accept it as like a language transfer.
This college doesn't offer it as a class, and I'm not very happy about it. So I need one more language class, and I really want to take sign
That's why I
language.
didn't take sign in high school because they were like, yeah, some universities don't accept it as a language
Did you
transfer.
take it at like Wacom?
I'm going to.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Does Western provide translators? Like if you only speak
I feel like
in
you'd have to have your own translator.
I've never seen it in a class. I went to WSU and stood in a class, like a big lecture hall where they had one.
because they always have that one chair in the front of the room that is reserved for interpreters. So I've just always because I've never seen them used.
Yeah, I've seen like people typing up like lectures like really fast, but not like sign language.
Interesting.
There we go. Yeah. Well, like, and how are we gonna do that for teachers when we have a deaf person in our class?
That is why I really wanted to learn sign language, because I'm just sure, like, sometime in my career I'm going to come across, like, either a student or parents that communicate in sign, and I want to be able to have some, like, sort of basis of communication.
Yeah, like, in Spanish, you could, like, Google how to say, like, your kid's doing great, and then, like, say that, but, like, I think it'd be harder to, like, Google, like, how do you sign this, and, like, not really have any, like, base foundation of it at all.
I think there's certain services that they qualify for, but that is a good question if like a translator is provided.
I've never run into a deaf individual in my schooling ever.
I have, too.
Were there
They always had
translators?
someone with them. Yeah, like, always.
Well, but I don't think, like, elementary schools, a lot of them can't afford to provide. Like, there has to be some sort of special staff that.
Right.
I know there was a law I learned about in SPED. Like there's
Section 504, and then there's something else that they can qualify under, like specifically deaf. People that are deaf. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. And one of the laws provides funding, but the other one, I can't think. But I wonder if a translator is.
Yeah, like if translators are provided,
Yeah.
or if like the student has to provide it themselves, like hire someone from like outside, and then like that's just like their like, well, like going to class though, like in class, like does the school provide it, or like do you hire someone like a nanny and then have them come to school with your child?
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
40 for what?
45.
Yeah, I remember the two girls in my school that, like, one could kind of talk, but she couldn't hear it all. So, like, she could talk to you, but then you wouldn't really, like, be able to say anything back.
Yeah.
But, like, when, like, in passing periods, they didn't have, like, their translator with them, but then they were always in their next class, and, like, they would just sit next to them and, like, just talk to them the whole time. Like, it definitely, like, I think, like, in, like, a, not, like, a mean way, but it was distracting at times. But then, obviously, it's, like, necessary.
I also thought, like, in this article, all of her arguments for sign language being real languages, just how similar, like, everything is. Like, the identical properties that they share with spoken language. I just didn't really ever think about it as being that close. And just, like, the sub-level lexical structure of signs that are identical to the phonetic, phonemic, and syllabic structures of our language, and just all the different components, like creating sentences, creating more complex words. It was all very similar, it sounded like, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
That makes me wonder, because a lot of parents teach their kids to sign.
Yeah, like more.
Before,
I feel like that's one thing I always see kids
Thank
doing.
you.
Yeah.
Before they can talk. But isn't that...
It was
in the daycare.
I forgot.
And that's so weird. I just know that.
What?
This is suicide. Because this girl had to learn, like, you know, like sometimes in sign language, and this is McDonald's. So, like, some people have to learn a song and they have to, like, sign the song, like, lyrics in class. And so she did Beautiful Girl by Sean Kingston, and it's like, I have you suicide. So she taught me that.
Actually, I had a biology professor one time, a teacher in high school one time, that taught us, like, a concept in sign language. But it was, like, really weird because it was, like, didn't, like, translate exactly the way it was fluent in sign language, which is, like, what got me interested in sign language. My little brother does it now, but it was the concept of, like, all, like, fetuses or eggs begin, like, as female. So, but, like, the direct sign was, like, something that was, like, when you, like, person, like, egg, you, and then there was the sign for female. So, like, we learned it in sign language, but, like, I don't know if, like, I'd have remembered that if I hadn't, like, been taught. Like, oh, like, they gave it to me in a different language, and, like, we all, like, learned that together, and, like,
Interesting.
cool, and now I remember.
That's kind of like a PSYOP strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty visual,
But-
whatever you're learning.
Yeah.
It's engaging.
I mean,
Yeah, and
That's
there's a
why-
little bit of crossover to language there.
Right. And, like, when we went to when we interviewed the person at the school, like, she was saying, like, we do songs. Like, she was, like, chanting. You guys remember that when she was, like, I don't know, it was kind of awkward. What was she
It was
saying?
interesting. I forgot what it was, but it was, I mean,
She was like,
It's
the
something
verb,
different.
and the noun, blah, blah, blah. And I just was like, okay.
What was that from?
The lady that we interviewed, the older
Oh,
one, the 5th grader.
Yeah, okay.
You were there.
Yeah, I was like, I was there too. I heard the same thing. Wow.
I mean, but we only heard it once. But if they're hearing that like
Every day,
every
yeah.
day, then you know.
Like, they're never forget, like, they're not going to forget it. Even if they want to.
Yeah, if they want to.
Oh, I thought it was interesting, like the whole developmental stages with the babies and the children, just like how similar they lined up.
But would kids developing like signs before they can speak, is that, I don't know, is that the same? I don't know. It seems like they learn to sign before they speak.
Maybe at the same time.
I think, well, part of it though, like I know before they're forming like verbal speakers, before they're learning actual words, they're kind of just babbling and making noise.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you're a baby that's completely deaf, maybe you're still making noise, but you can't hear, you're not relating those noises to anything else because you're not actually hearing how those noises, like, because your parents are speaking to you, and that's where babies are picking up sounds, kind of, like they start to naturally make sounds, but over time, listening to their parents, they're correlating the sounds by making to words. But if you're completely deaf, you're not doing that.
Right.
So, like, you can still learn, like, then it'll be, like, a very intentional, like, teaching certain signs and, like, how to convey these messages.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be at a similar time as, because, like, with a baby, you can hope that they start making, like, signs at you at some point, but I don't think, it's almost like they're babbling with their hands, you know, because they, like, if they're doing this, they're getting a reward for it. So pretty soon they're going to pick up, the more I do this, like, I'm going to get more, but they don't know that's what that means.
Yeah.
Plus, that comes a lot with, like, saying the word, too. Because I know when I was nannying a little guy, he was working on more, and I would say more at him, and he would do this. And, like, my boyfriend's little niece right now, at this point, she just turned 1. And when you say, like, how big is Taylor? She'll put her arms up, because, like, well, I say, so big. And so now when she's like, how big are you? She's like, here I am, and they'll laugh, and then she smiles, and then she just thinks it's hilarious and throws her arms up all the time.
That's so funny.
It's really cute, but
there's like not a correlation between like the movement and the word.
there is for us, but I don't
But
think
not
there
for
is
the
for her.
child.
Yeah.
But then you also get like kids that you walk by, and if they want you to pick them up, they do this.
Yeah,
Like that's a sign for them. And
Yeah.
like nobody probably taught them that. They just like pick me up.
that's true.
I do
Like-
this and I'll get picked up. So.
Yeah, that's one way that they like learn that like a sign's gonna get me like this. If I do this particular thing, it's gonna get me this, or it communicates this correctly.
But then at the same time, like, we have come to understand, like, when a kid comes up to us like this, like, you gotta pick that kid up.
Yeah.
Like, exactly.
What's our time?
Bye.
Bye.